Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. It's the holiday season. Yes, the holiday season upon us, and 'tis the season for a government shutdown. A good time for government shutdown, right? And why would we want a government shutdown? Well, because the Republicans need it. They need a good hostage crisis. They need something to help the economy tank a little bit. They need to stop the vaccine mandates, which I've been getting tons of emails saying, good conservatives, shut the government down because we want to stop these evil mandates. And of course, they want to stop the Build Back Better plan because that's what Republicans do. And it's not surprising, nothing shocking here. Because as you know, December 3rd, just around the corner. That is the funding deadline. And it's quickly approaching. And we're looking down the barrel of probably the fourth government shutdown since 2018. And you go, why? Well, because they need it. They need the chaos. And look, the fourth since 18, forget about all the near misses that we had during the Obama years, where for those 6 years where Republicans controlled the House, the GOP really thought they were Kiefer Sutherland in that TV show 24, creating another ticking bomb moment. Down to the last moment, could we destroy the globe? Could the global economy go toilet first? And then at the last second, we got our pound of flesh. Democrats were willing to cave. Remember Screwquester? I do. And this is what Republicans do. Because here's the reality. Democrats understand. Republicans are willing to burn the house down. They are willing to burn the house down and kill everybody inside. There's no question about that. And what they want to do is they want to stop the economy from rebounding. They hope the inflation gets worse. They're hoping for more economic chaos. This is who they are. You remember the day that Obama took office? You had Mitch McConnell. We're going to make him a one-term president. You had the titular head of the Republican Party, Rush Limbaugh, saying, I hope he fails. This is the same thing. This is what they're doing. And as President Biden tweeted out today, he said, quote, one Republican senator said that rising prices were a, quote, gold mine for Republicans politically. He said, imagine rooting for higher costs for American families just to score a few political points. Yes! It's what they do, man. When are we going to get it through the thick skulls that this is what they do? This is who they are. This is what they want. They don't want things getting better. They're very happy with the way things are. A wealth class that is firmly in control of our politics and our economy, consolidation of our economy, monopolization of our economy, getting bigger and bigger so a handful of people control all of the wealth, all of the power, all of the means of production. And while the working class, we, the rest of us, we scurry and fight and are easily divided and sliced and diced and pitted against each other for what crumbs are left. And sadly, the crumbs are getting smaller and smaller. So, they're happy with the high inflation. They get something to complain about. They're happy with the fact that, we don't think there are jobs. Weirdly enough, this president has created almost 6 million jobs in his 10 months. If you really believe that it's the president's job. And the same people who brought you, we shouldn't do anything on the virus. I'm getting a ton of emails from cons saying, well, we need to shut down the economy, close the purse strings so Biden can't respond. At a time, and I love this, at a time when a new variant is coming online. This is the brilliance of the Republican Party. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They didn't care about their own voters, which is why, during the Trump years, they were having big rallies, big super spreader events. For them, it's just about scoring political points. And we're coming on to possibly the next wave. This Omicron, this is coming. And congratulations, California. You are the winner. You have the first case evidently. And understand, Republicans are going to blame California when it happens. See, it was at California. And not, the fact that their horrible policies are going to help spread it. Never mind that. Also, they want to stop the Build Back Better plan. We talked about this yesterday. They are all a tizzy. Oh, with inflation, we can't do anything. We can't possibly help the economy. And as I said, look, our Republican friends, they are eager to push the dynamite button. They're eager to blow up the House. They're eager to blow up the Biden presidency just for their own gain. This is not new. Nothing new here, folks. And I'm sitting here and I'm having some people going, can you believe this? I'm going, yes. Yes, because this is who they are. And I hope at some point we wake up to that. You have a political party that is crazy. They're off their meds. And as I said, California, congratulations, you're the winner. First case of Omicron. We're going to see where this takes us. Also, the big news today, the Supreme Court, every indication from the court. And you didn't even need to listen to the questions. You didn't need any reporting coming out of this Supreme Court that Roe versus Wade is going to go the way of the dodo bird. It's done. This is going to be something that's going to go back, and you're going to have to fight in the states. And look, this is maybe an opportunity. Maybe this is an opportunity to start mobilizing people. That you have a political party, the Republicans, who are attempting to undo every bit of progress of the 20th century. I had someone today go, can you believe they're willing to overturn 50 years of precedent? And I go, yeah, they just a couple of years ago overturned 40 plus years of precedent in the Abood decision when they overturned Abood for Janus. Basically making the public sector workplace a right to work nation. Right to work for poverty rate wages, right to work for less health insurance, right to work for less retirement security, right to work for no job security. The whole no rights at work agenda, where there are no rights and no work. But hey, it sounds nice. Fits on a bumper sticker, it does. And keeps some stupid people stupid. But here's the thing, and this is what's bugging me. You look at this, and people have been holding their breath, and, will it happen? Will it happen? Yes, it's going to happen. That's the reason Trump was installed. And if you listened to conservative voters, they didn't care about that he was a con man. They didn't care about that he was a philanderer. They didn't care about any of his bankruptcies or his business practices or his horrible personality or the fact that he was going to rob, steal, and grift his way through his 4 years, which he did. Never mind that. He was going to put people on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe, to attack workers' rights. And that's what he did. And this is one of those moments where you go, here's the reality. We have a two-party system in this country. And one of those parties is crazy. They've lost their flipping mind. And I always go back to the Dwight David Eisenhower quote. Wrote a letter to his brother Edgar saying, hey, if you're ever anyone in our political history would come out against unemployment insurance, the Farm Bill, labor laws, Social Security, any of those New Deal policies that were extraordinarily popular, anybody coming out against those, you would never hear from them again. You'd see there are a couple, Texas oil millionaires, some businessmen, but their numbers are negligible and they are stupid. Stupid is running the crazy party. Stupid is running one of our main political parties. And you would think, if you have one of the two major political parties attacking a woman's right to choose, attacking Americans' right to vote, attacking the right of association by joining and forming a union, and cheering for people who wanted to literally overthrow our elections and overthrow our government. You would think the other would go, maybe we should, I don't know. Remember that televangelist from a number of years ago? Don't just sit there, do something. Maybe they should do something. Just a thought. Try it. It might work. Now, I do understand. You've got Joe Manchin, you got Kirsten Sinema, you've got the backstops for the wealth class. That's why they're there. I get that. But now would be a really good time for Democrats to immediately put forth a piece of legislation and go, we're going to guarantee a woman's right to choose. Gonna do that. And if you have to undo the filibuster, you have to undo it. Because understand, the other side, if they get something that they want, there is no question that they're going to undo the filibuster. Remember, during the Trump years, there's only one thing they really wanted. There's only one thing they really wanted. Everything else they could do through, executive order, which Trump did a bunch of times. They wanted to rob the coffers. They wanted to steal from the till. And they did, to the tune of almost $2 trillion. And they handed it out to the wealthy, and the wealthy were very happy. Thank you very much. Big corporations, very happy. Thank you very much. Working class, well, we didn't get much. We got to pay for it. We got to, live through diminished opportunities and lower opportunities for our children. And then the second that Democrats take power again, we hear it again. We can't afford education for children. We can't afford universal pre-K. Yeah, we're the party of family values. We're going to tell you that over and over. But when it comes to actually being someone who believes in family values, like, family leave, so that if you're sick or a loved one's sick, or you're welcoming a new child into the world, that you get to take a couple of weeks off and not go broke doing it, family value kind of stuff. They're against that. And this is where I'm going, it's time for the Democrats to, while you still have a chance, undo the filibuster, guarantee a woman's right to choose, guarantee voters' right to have access to the ballot box, guarantee workers' rights to join and form unions, and do those things. Now, there'll be people who go, but Rick, the Republicans will come in and they'll undo all that. And this is why voting matters. This is why engaging voters matters. Because these are popular things. These are things we the people want. We the people want access to the ballot box. Large numbers. We the people believe, it's 60-40, that a woman should have the right to choose. I'll go to the ballot box with that. Overwhelmingly, people believe that workers should have the right to join and form unions. Yes. Yes, they should. But sadly, what's happened is the moneyed interests in this, they've decided. They've bought an entire political party. They control that entire party. The moneyed interests control it. Look, some of the kooks have taken over a little bit. Some of the Q nuts and those, they've taken over a little. We're now seeing the kind of the little internal rift that's going on. But the moneyed interests control that party. And sadly, the Democratic Party too, to an extent. This is why it comes back to us. It comes back to you and me. It comes back to us being active and engaged. It comes back to us standing up and fighting for the policies that we want to make lives better. At the end of the day, I say this all the time. I don't care who brings it to the floor. If there's a piece of legislation that's going to make people's lives better, I'm in favor of it. It's about getting things done for me. Had Trump come out with an infrastructure bill on day one, I would have been one of the first people to say, yes, we need to support an infrastructure bill. Now he goes in and says, we're going to build an infrastructure bill and we're going to hand it all off to corporations and we're going to gut prevailing wage. We got a problem. And those are the fights that you have. But you got to have them. It's amazing to me that Trump didn't move forward on prevailing wage because he was angry at the Democrats. It's quite bizarre. And that's what happens when you have a thin-skinned leader like that. But we're in this moment. And, the abortion issue, I've said it before, it's not my issue. As a man, I don't think I have any say in what a woman does with her body. I'm not personally in favor of abortion, but I think it should be safe and legal. What's going to be interesting when this goes away, and I do believe that it will. I don't see any way that the Mississippi case gets turned down. And I do believe that they've called for a total, push to repeal to undo the whole thing. What this then becomes is an interesting moment where do you start holding men accountable? My mother raised me as a single mother. There was he ran off and there was nothing to hold him accountable. Do we now have a moment where you go, okay, well, if you're going to force a woman to have that child, we're going to force that man to pay for it. Going to be interesting to see how many people go, gee, I'm not so in favor of this anymore. And the fights will revert back to the states, where there may be an opportunity to have some real ground up grassroots movement building. All of the things that happened in the New Deal, all the things that FDR moved forward on, those were done by grassroots organizers. Those were done by people in the streets. The same thing with Roe. All of this stuff was done because you had movements of people saying, we don't want women dying in alleys. I don't want my daughters to live in that world. Because here's what I know. I know rich women, they're going to get the care that they need. The people we're going to find in alleys are going to be poor and working class women. And that to me is unacceptable. And it should be unacceptable to everyone. If you want people to have children, create an economy and a place where you want to bring children into this world. You don't force them, especially not like this. But hey, this is what our conservative friends do. This is who they are. The question is, will Democrats, will they ball up their little digits? Will they get into the ring and start duking it out? Are they going to swing back over this? Are they going to actually pursue some legislation to move us in the right direction? We'll see. But it's going to come down to you and me picking up the phone, calling them daily and saying, you know what? You should be doing that, and you should be doing it now. Going to take a quick break right here. When we come back and talk a little bit about Rosa Parks Day. It is that day. Quick break, right back. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day the Anaconda Copper Company instituted its rustling card system at its mines in Butte, Montana. The company used the rustling cards in two ways. First, as a work permit, and then as a way to keep track of miners. A miner looking for work would first have to apply for a card. Miners had to present information about citizenship status, English literacy skills, work history, and 2 years of employer references. Once the card was approved, the miners would then be allowed to apply for work. The Butte Miners Union charged that it was the company's way of blacklisting those who had quit, been fired, or known as union militants. By 1917, the Metal Mine Workers Union and the IWW added that the company was looking to nip agitation in the bud. They alleged employers were holding onto cards or denying them altogether for no reason. According to historian Paul Brissenden, both unions maintained the company was looking to, quote, punish those who were at one time active in the socialist administration of Butte Mayor Louis J. Duncan, to prevent the Socialist Party from again securing a foothold in Butte, to strengthen the hands of the more conservative unions, and to curb the industrial unionism of the IWW and Metal Mine Workers Union. The company asserted its right to keep out its enemies out of the mines, alleging they presented a danger to mine safety. But the unions shot back, stating the blacklist meant the hiring of untrained, inexperienced workers who presented the real danger. Brissenden notes that many union radicals continued to work in the mines despite the card system.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So back in 2015, we had done a labor history tour looking at labor's involvement in the civil rights movement. And it all came out of, honestly, my oldest daughter coming home from school. And, you had that conversation, well, what'd you learn in school today? And, I learned about Rosa Parks. I go, what'd you learn? Oh, she was tired. Is that it? Yeah, that's about it. And they go, I think there's a lot more to that story than, that. And sadly, that's all she was taught. So it gave me the idea that we need to get back out on the road and find the places where the civil rights history was and find labor's involvement. And one of the places we went was the Rosa Parks Museum on the campus of Troy University in Montgomery, Alabama. And I had an incredible conversation with the person who was the director at the time. I think she still may be, Felicia Bell, and got an incredible tour from Ricky Brown. It was an eye-opening experience for me in that there was so much of the history that I didn't know, but learning about, as I said a moment ago, the organizing, the activism, the people in the streets, that stuff, really important. And here to share some thoughts on, this day, Rosa Parks Day, I've asked Madeline Burkhardt to come talk with us. She's the adult education coordinator and curator there at the Rosa Parks Museum at Troy University. Madeline, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking us to come on tonight.
So like I said, a lot of us learned, hey, she was tired, she was sitting in the front of the bus. They asked her politely to move. She refused because she was tired, all of that stuff. And that's not actually what happened.
Right, exactly. There are a couple of myths around what happened on December 1st, 1955. One of those would be, that she was just physically tired because she was working all day and her feet hurt. And, I'm sure that's true, too, but it was more of a mental and spiritual tired of giving in. And that is something that we have really tried to push into people as they visit the museum, that She wasn't just tired, but tired of the racism, tired of the sexism, tired of every ism.
Sick and tired, fed up and tired. Exactly. And one of the other things that I learned, and I didn't know this, is that she wasn't actually in the front of the bus.
Right. So she was in an area where she could be completely fine. And it was kind of the up front of the, what was known as like the colored section back then, like the end of the white section. So she was in a fine area according to the laws back then. But the law was if the bus started to fill up, which it did that evening, and white passengers were to get on, people who were not white were supposed to give up their seats to those who were getting on the bus. And she didn't want to do it. And I don't blame her one bit.
Nope. Yeah, and so much for chivalry. I mean, because she wasn't a young woman. I mean, she was in her, she was middle-aged at the time.
42. She was 42. And a lot of people also have this mental image of her being like in her 80s or something. This very short, elderly woman who she was actually taller than me.
And well trained. I mean, when you start to delve into this a little bit better, you find out she took some activism training at the Highlander Center, which did a lot of that. Originally did labor organizing and then was civil rights organizing, and part of this whole thing was really a part of an activist movement, wasn't it? Was it not?
Oh yes, all of that. People had this training back then from Highlander and then just, from mass meetings that they went to here in Montgomery and other places. They had to learn how to peacefully protest. And I'm not sure if you've ever been to the Atlanta, I always get the name wrong. It's the Civil and Human Rights Center there, right by the World of Coke. But they have an excellent exhibition where you have to put yourself kind of in the shoes of the lunch counter sit-in.
Yep.
And people are yelling at you, and you have a timer going to see how long you last. And I lasted 13 seconds.
Yeah, I wouldn't have lasted at all.
No, I could not do it. And, this is something that, I've done every day for 5.5 years is tell this story. And when it came time for me to sit down, I was like, I know what comes next. I can't do this.
Now, what I did find interesting when we set out to do this tour back in 2015 is that every place where we've treated black people poorly, there's now a museum or a center or some kind of tourist attraction. So, so former hate, tourism seems to be kind of a thing.
It is. I will say that there are a lot of people who make almost like pilgrimages to Montgomery now to go to all of these different sites, like Rosa Parks Museum or Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, where Dr. King was a pastor, or the new Equal Justice Initiative, different centers and memorials. And, we still have people who come from other parts of the country or from other countries who they're expecting to see that 1955, 56 racism, because they have I guess that idea that we've been frozen in time in Montgomery. So it's really interesting to talk to those visitors.
Yeah, no, we did a whole bunch of these places all through Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, all throughout the South. We were in all of these places and saw just some horrible things. And, I think we need these kind of museums and centers and places to remember, just how bad things were, so that we don't go back there. Because I look at where we are politically right now, I fear we're at a moment where things could get worse.
Yeah, we have the same fear. And, unfortunately, the people who really need to learn this are not the ones who are coming. And we don't know exactly how to fix that. In the state of Alabama, critical race theory has just been banned. So does that mean that, we can't be telling the story anymore? There's a lot of, what ifs going on. We're still going to do it. But, there's a lot of uncertainty around what's going on. And my colleagues and I have been really kind of on edge about it, especially this past year. But we keep doing what we think Mrs. Parks would want us to do.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show with Madeline Burkhardt. She's the adult education coordinator and curator at the Rosa Parks Museum on the campus of Troy University in Montgomery, Alabama. If you've got a question, thought, comment, something you want to chime in, give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Now, one of the things that, again, I go back to this organizing, this community building exercise that I think is something that we can learn an awful lot about, using our economic power and our ability to make change. I'll tell you, I was surprised at how well it was all put together, how quickly it all came together. Can you explain a little bit?
Yeah, so that earlier on I alluded to multiple myths of December 1st, 1955. Another common one is that everything was planned. So Rosa Parks was planted on that bus that evening to start the boycott, and that's just not true. She said that, and we were going by what she said. And there were people before Rosa Parks who had been arrested, and so there was talk amongst people in Montgomery, amongst the NAACP and other groups, what can we do? So they kind of came up with this idea of boycotting the buses. They were just waiting for the right person and kind of the right time. And so December 1st, 1955 was just this perfect storm of events because Rosa Parks was the secretary for the NAACP. So they had an idea of what they wanted to do and kind of how to get it pulled together. So when that moment occurred, they could just make it happen so fast. And even today with Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, everything, I haven't seen that kind of organization that they had back then with just mimeograph machines and the home phones.
Yeah, I mean it's quite remarkable. But you think about the community that was built out of this. And one of the things that I did learn in doing this tour, we went into Jackson, Mississippi, for instance, and learned about Black Wall Street. And they were basically showing this community that was built where it was everyone was involved in it. And sadly, when as the person who gave us the tour explained, as soon as you had the Brown versus Board of Education and the separate but equal thing taken away, all of that somehow got destroyed. And it was one of those how did that happen kind of moments for me, because the way he was explaining it is, they had actually figured out how to have a community, be prosperous, and stick together in ways that we don't see very often today.
Right. People in power don't want other groups to come in power, and they get really scared and frightened of those people. So when you are those people who are not in power and you are able to unite like that, you really can get stuff done. I mean, here they had the interstate cut through many black neighborhoods, and I'm sure that it's like that in other parts of the country as well. And there was just that fear that they didn't want, other people to mix with them because they were in power and they wanted to keep it that way.
Now, you said a moment ago that people, think that it was all planned out. And I'll be honest with you, I'm one of those people who thinks that there was some planning that went on to that because evidently she had an experience with that driver in the past. I guess, did he actually hit her is what I kind of remember when he threw her off a bus, years earlier?
Yes. So she had an incident with a driver where she was just going to go in. At the time, there was kind of the front entrance to the bus, and then there was an entrance kind of in the middle. And that's where, if you weren't white, you would go in that way. So if you weren't white, you would have to go up to the front of the bus, put your fare in the machine, then get off the bus, and then go right around to the back, to the middle entrance. And so Rosa Parks, she was going to pay. So she put her money in, and she was like, I'm just going to walk down the aisle. I'm not going to, get off this bus just to
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Entrance. Right. It makes absolutely no sense. He did not like that. And the rule was then that bus drivers kind of had this, they could act as police during that time. And so she was actually charged with that night disobeying the bus driver, not for like a racial kind of law at the time. But so the bus driver drove off because he got so mad at her and just left her standing there, was what that first incident was.
Yeah, but you look at that, and I had a nice conversation with Fred Gray, and there's some wily looks that I got, or I just got the feeling. But you're telling me it was not planned, so I'm going to believe you. So in this day, what's the message that comes out of this?
The message is, in my opinion, the message is anyone can do something. You don't have to be necessarily in a position of power to do it. I think that is the beauty of Rosa Parks. She was just an everyday woman. Same with Dr. King, and every other figurehead that we've seen. They weren't necessarily in a position of power before. So anyone can do something. Anyone can say no. They just have to find that inner Rosa Parks voice.
Yeah, I suggest anyone, if you're in Montgomery, Alabama, go to Troy University, go to the Rosa Parks Museum there. It's phenomenal. Is it the actual bus, or is it a replica of the bus you guys have?
It's not. So it is a real 1955 Montgomery City bus, but so there's a very good chance that she was on it at some point. But the quote-unquote real bus that she was arrested on is actually at the Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan.
I remember going through a lot of these places and going near that bus and and looking at the setup you guys have, which is phenomenal, and being that close to history was really powerful. One of the other places I got that feeling was in Birmingham. There's the Civil Rights Museum there where they have Dr. King, the jail cell that Dr. King was at in Birmingham, where you can actually touch the cell bars. That was probably the only other place where you go, wow, this is actually history.
Yeah, and right now, so the museum is actually located on the site where Rosa Parks was arrested. And right now, for the anniversary, we have taken her original fingerprints out of the vault, and they are on display next to that bus. So I think it's just insanely powerful, even more powerful than normal.
No, and good stuff. If you want to check out their website, troy.edu/Rosa Parks, that will take you there. And you've got some stuff on display that you can see online, right?
We do. So we have a lot online. We're on Facebook mostly. We're a pretty small staff, so we have an easier time keeping up with Facebook than anything else. So all of our programs and things that we've done recently, they're all saved on our Facebook page, including the statue unveiling that we had today.
No, it was incredible. It's an incredible place. Keep up the great work. I hope to make it back down there sometime very soon. But Madeline, I appreciate you taking some time and sharing some thoughts with us.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Anytime.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Look, this is one of those moments where I still remember going through this museum with the kids, and the look of awe on their face. And in a lot of these places, like I said, tourism, hate-filled tourism seems to be a thing now. We went through a whole bunch of places that you just look at the tragedy. We ended up in one place that the curator said, because my kids were small at the time, and he's like, I'm going to have someone come take your kids to the other side of this. They're not going to want to see this. And we walk through this place, and it's it's burning bodies on crosses, it's people hanging, it's the horrible stuff that people did to other people that I got to tell you has to be seen and remembered. So she brought up critical race theory a second ago. All I know is that they're crazy people who are against a theory that's critical. I want my kids to learn actual history, which is why we went to those places, why we wanted to touch the history, why we did the background research, so that when we got there, we knew what we were looking at. I don't know that any parent doesn't want their kids to understand the history. When we walked up the stairs to the Central High School in Arkansas, thinking about the little girl who was trying to go to that school, or in Birmingham, the school there that was desegregated, and the kind of hate that was thrown at them. You think about it. I think about that little girl, walking into the school. If she can endure what harassment and threats and hate just to go to school, I think your kids and mine, we can maybe learn about it, see a picture about it, hear just a little bit about what they did back then. Not that I did it. I'm not responsible for what they did in the past, but learn from it, and then say, what? We're not going to do it again. I don't think that's difficult. I really don't. I don't think it's difficult at all to be in a place where we're going to learn from history. We're going to learn the lessons. We're going to not do it again. Pretty simple. But I'll tell you, some of the things that we saw were just incredible. And look, if you're in Birmingham, that place, the Rosa Parks Museum, if you're in Birmingham, the Civil Rights Center there is incredible, right across the street from the 16th Street Baptist Church that got blown up. I got stories from there as well. It was heartbreaking stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. You got any questions, comments on this? Love to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, Max Byrne's going to be here to share some thoughts on the day in the Supreme Court and maybe some other stuff. Quick break. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Time to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1966. That was the day that the registered nurses of the Youngstown General Duty Nurses Association walked out of their jobs. Nursing could be a grueling profession, with long hours of physical labor for low pay. In Youngstown, the nurses were frustrated because there were inconsistencies in pay. Some recently hired nurses made more than those who had been working for years. Part-time nurses did not receive the same wage increases as full-time employees. They also did not feel that they had enough say in delivering quality care for their patients. When they asked to meet with the hospital's executive director to discuss their concerns, the nurses were rebuffed. They then contacted the Ohio Nurses Association union and asked for help. Youngstown was a steel town, a union town, and the nurses were ready to join in the local labor movement. At first, the Youngstown Hospital Association refused to bargain with the union. But when the nurses threatened to walk out, negotiations began. After 2 months of talking at the bargaining table, major issues remained unsettled, including pay and union recognition. Fed up, the nurses called for a mass resignation. 305 of the 433 nurses turned in their resignations. 2/3 of them were part-time nurses. They formed informational picket lines outside the hospitals. A federal mediator was brought in to settle the dispute. In the end, the nurses won significant gains. They received a more than 25% raise over 2 years. A grievance procedure was established for the first time, but most importantly, the union gained recognition and the right to bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions for the nurses and their patients. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So yesterday I announced that Dr. Oz was going to be running for Senate as a Republican in Pennsylvania. And I got a listener sent me a really long email to let me know that Dr. Oz has a very long history of peddling medical misinformation. And I'm like, yeah, of course. That's why he's running as a Republican. Those are the people who are going to vote for him. It fits. So when it fits, understand it's who they are. Now he claims he's a moderate. That was back, 2007. Still was Trump's guy on health and fitness. So we will see. We'll see what Dr. Oz brings. We'll see if Oprah actually comes out and supports him. But here to share some thoughts on, the top stories of the day, I've asked our good friend Max Burns to come talk with us. Max is a Democratic strategist, also daily columnist over at the Daily Beast. He's got a new piece out we're going to talk a little bit about. But Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Anytime. How are you?
I am good. So let me ask you, what do you think? Dr. Oz for Senate? What do you think?
I'm all in. I've been saying for years that what the country needs is someone who has no idea why he's there. I mean, he doesn't live in Pennsylvania. He was only a Republican as of about 2 days ago. The guy doesn't seem to have any idea what the Senate does. Sure, sounds great. I'm sure he's going to do fantastic.
And that is exactly why the Republicans will vote for him. Because they're the party of, let's destroy government and let's have the dumbest, I'm not saying he's dumb, but the politically the dumbest guy in the room running things.
Yeah, at this point, you need to essentially be a very successful con man to even get a hearing within the Republican Party. If you haven't defrauded at least 100,000 Americans, you're not qualified to be a member of the Republican Party at this point. And it really is, though, on a more serious note, it's deeply unfortunate because Dr. Oz's nonsensical quack advice has actually hurt people. And that's something he has never fully accounted for. And I hope this at least gives people a chance to hold his feet to the fire on that kind of stuff.
Now I'm wondering, now that you're going into the big fishbowl, how much of that starts coming out? And look, do Republican voters care? And this is where I'm at. I don't think they care. I don't care what he does, how horrible it is. I don't think they care.
No, and Dr. Oz, what's fascinating, if you watch his intro video, spends the first minute or two bashing Donald Trump for how many people his ineptitude killed with regards to COVID, and then says, too many people have died. This is the same Dr. Oz who was on Fox News saying 2 to 3% of American school kids could die of COVID, but that's, worth the cost of keeping schools open. That's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
So apparently Dr. Oz has a wildly different scale on acceptable death than I think the rest of us do.
It's crazy times. And I'll tell you, I'm really concerned because here's somebody who has the means. He's got name recognition, and there are people. He's Donald Trump's guy. Click. Really, really concerning. Speaking of Donald Trump's guy, today I guess the January 6th committee voted 9-0 to hold Trump's former DOJ official Jeffrey Clark in contempt. Evidently, Clark was one of the key figures in Trump's effort to overturn the election. Evidently, what I'm hearing, he's now come around and said that he'll come in, but he's going to plead the fifth. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, and it's looking now like the move on Steve Bannon to arrest him and indict him federally for contempt has really loosened a lot of tongues. I know Mark Meadows said he's coming in. A few others have said that they'll come in and cooperate. A few are trying to negotiate conditions as if this is a business deal and not an investigation into undermining the American Republic. But I think it's important that Steve Bannon saw consequences. I think that reasserted the power of the congressional subpoena, and it's going to keep this congressional committee moving in a way that it was not before.
No, this is good. And look, I don't care if you go in there and you plead the fifth to everything. You got to sit in the seat. It's your right to plead the fifth, and it's my right to go, well, what are you hiding? And to have people keep digging, but you got to be in that seat.
Yeah, that's right. And if it's going to be a circus, which it might, we saw with Corey Lewandowski during the Trump impeachment, he didn't plead the fifth. He didn't refuse to go. He went and made a circus out of his hearing. But it's important that the American people see that. They see that these people aren't serious, that they have contempt for democracy. They have contempt for you and for me. And I think that that played a powerful role in 2020. Yeah. So if they want to sit there and refuse to help investigate one of the biggest civil insurrections in American history, I think the American people should know that.
No, I'm right there with you. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're at Max Burns, Democratic strategist, columnist over at the Daily Beast. You can check out his work at the Daily Beast there. He's got a new piece out on, well, you know, today's Supreme Court. It's titled "Supreme Court Makes Clear the Unthinkable is Here on Abortion." Do you think it was unthinkable? I've been saying this is what this court was assembled for. They're just doing what was preordained. There's no surprise here.
Yeah, this is one of the only times I had an argument with my editor because it's quite thinkable. This has been Mitch McConnell and before him, generations of Republican leaders' plan from the beginning to say, we're not going to bother with legislation. We're not going to bother with doing things. We're going to focus just on courts. And when we get enough, you're going to see why that was such a smart investment. And, you know, in a very grim view, it seems to have been an investment that paid off. But if Republicans succeed in toppling Roe versus Wade, they're almost assured to topple themselves along with it. Because now they'll be forced to defend doing something that upwards of 80% of Americans, including almost half of Republicans, support.
Yeah, I mean,
that's something Democrats are dreaming for.
No, this is one of those cases where the dog has caught the car, and you gotta be wondering, you know, where they go, because once this issue goes away, they have nothing really to keep people stupid over. It's going to revert back to the states, and that's where, you know, I've been saying the activism then begins, because some of these solidly red states could then be somewhat in play for moderate Democrats who are saying, no, we want the right to have women to have the right to choose. We don't want working class and poor women dead in back alleys. We don't want to return to those days.
And I think that's a powerful message. We saw that suburban Republican women who sort of abandoned the GOP in 2020 to support Biden sort of trickled back with Terry McAuliffe in Virginia in 2021. Those are the voters who may be fiscally conservative. They may not like critical race theory or whatever Republicans have concocted today, but they also vehemently support abortion rights and always have. And they were willing to overlook what they saw as theatrical Republican opposition to abortion. But now that Republicans are actually taking your rights away, those suburban Republican women are not laughing. And those are the people who are going to be the margin for whether Democrats hold the House and Senate or not.
Yeah. No, I had someone, you know, say to me today, you know, boy, do you think they'll overturn 50 years of decided law? And I'm like, yeah. Of course they will. They did it to the Abood decision a couple of years ago that made this country a right-to-work country for public sector workers, and they didn't think twice. Trust me, this is their goal. They're going to do it.
It is, and there's an excellent point that spokesman for NARAL made in my column, which is that this is a similar situation to the Affordable Care Act. People got complacent. They said, there's never going to be a time when the Supreme Court would strike down ACA. It's too embedded in our society. And yet, when those people got complacent, didn't show up to the polls, Republicans were elected who ultimately put judges in who have weakened ACA. They're doing the same thing with abortion rights. They will do the same thing with gay and trans rights. This is a strategy that now Republicans know can work. They have the court they've waited for, and now it's just getting as many test cases in line as possible.
Now, what I found interesting is the Mississippi case, you know, was written in a way that would go, you know, kind of halfway. You know, we're gonna, and I think a lot of people were thinking, you know, they're going to incrementally move their way towards undoing the whole thing. And now some of the responses I'm seeing are going, no, they're accelerating that move to undoing it now. Do you get the same thoughts?
Yeah, this is a bigger swing than I think some people expected. As you saw Brett Kavanaugh essentially making a states' rights argument on this. And, you know, as we've all seen from the past, that never ends well. The states rarely ever get in the business of giving people rights. It's mainly a state's right to take away something from you. We saw Samuel Alito in one of the most disgusting things I have ever seen in politics. Compare the Roe versus Wade abortion law to Plessy versus Ferguson, the law that said Black Americans weren't people and couldn't file cases in court, and said both were wrongly decided and both should go. I mean, we've reached a level of mask off rhetoric that Democrats can listen to now or they can ignore. Yeah. And if we do not make abortion the issue for this campaign cycle, that will be our failing for generations to come.
Not just abortion. I mean, voting rights, another part of this, workers' rights. There's so much that, where I started with this, Max, is, the reality is you've got one political party who's hell-bent on tearing down the 20th century. You've got one political party who wants to take us back to the Stone Ages, and you've got another that I don't see doing enough. And I'm at this point where, you got to do something. You got to ball up your little digits, get in there and throw some punches. And at this point, there should be legislation put forth, and we should be doing something on the filibuster to ensure that people's rights are in place.
Yep, and I think you may see some momentum on that. I saw Susan Collins mentioned that she was now in support of a law codifying Roe versus Wade through Congress. That's going to require getting rid of the filibuster, which she does not support. So until she supports that, she really doesn't support any kind of abortion rights.
Right. It's all rhetoric.
These are the conversations. Yeah,
it's all rhetoric.
These are the conversations we need to have on the campaign trail. Because if you'll notice, for all of their aggression in the courts, Republicans are almost totally silent about abortion on the campaign trail. They want to talk about anything but abortion because they know that their own voters want them to keep Roe versus Wade. So the more Democrats force this conversation, the more we're setting the stage for 2022 in a way that Democrats can actually win.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, though. You've got the party of family values, or so they want us to believe, the folks who are the anti-abortion party. And you go, okay, well, if you're against abortion, how about making conditions so that people can bring children into this world and not bring them into poverty? Like universal pre-K, like, family medical leave, the $250 a month to help keep kids out of poverty. How about all of those things that are kind of in that Build Back Better plan that you're doing everything you can possibly do to make sure it doesn't pass? How about making the environment better for families to be able to bring children into this world instead of worrying about if they're going to be in poverty? How about doing that?
Yeah, I wish we could get any kind of good faith discussion going. I think of Amy Coney Barrett, who today said that essentially Roe versus Wade isn't needed anymore because of safe haven laws in 50 states that say you can give up an unwanted pregnancy, no questions asked. And that essentially alleviates the need to have an abortion at all, since you don't have to raise the child. And Amy Coney Barrett knows the pain and the damage that pregnancy causes to you. Amy Coney Barrett has children of her own. You don't just spring back up from a pregnancy ready to get back to work and get the economy moving again. These are deeply disingenuous arguments, and they're meant to mask just how extreme the Supreme Court is about to go in its decision to kill Roe.
Yeah. Now, my next thought is, Max, and this is where, again, I've said from the beginning, and this is going years ago, that Roe is going to be the first domino to topple. The next one will eventually be Griswold. And I believe that kind of came up from Barrett today, didn't it? That she was kind of reassuring people that that's not what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it did. And what we've seen is that we can't trust the Supreme Court to enforce its own standards. What we saw today with John Roberts was the Mississippi Attorney General submitting one argument to the court in a written argument for how they were going to proceed with this case, and arriving to oral arguments, making a case entirely about killing Roe versus Wade, something they never mentioned in their written brief. Normally, that would get you tossed out for lack of merit. But John Roberts and the Republicans decided to allow this to continue. So it really is a free-for-all in the Supreme Court right now. It's hard to take seriously anything that they're putting forward.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those moments where you go, I had thought originally it was going to be a 5-4 decision. I thought Roberts would probably side with, but I'm kind of looking at it going, I think it's going to be 6-3.
Yeah, it likely will. And even if it's sort of narrowly tailored, that's still going to be devastating. Getting rid of the 24-week window. Right now, Mississippi has a 15-week ban. You can't get an abortion after 15 weeks. Passing this essentially kills Roe in practice. And it means that if you live in Florida, you're surrounded by states that have closed their abortion clinics legally under this new guidance. If you live in Miami, you would have to drive almost 700 miles before you get to the first abortion clinic. That's the reality of what this means. And that's what people need to know.
Yeah.
That's the story Democrats need to tell.
No, as I said from the beginning, rich people are going to get what they need because they always do. Rich women will be fine. It's going to be the poor and the working class are the ones that suffer through all of this, and the ones that are in the horrible positions of the past. I mean, I remember my mother telling stories of a friend who had to go to Kentucky, I guess it was, to get a backroom abortion, end up being botched, and the girl ended up dying. And she remembered that, and that's not what I want for my daughters.
Yeah. And it's sad that we've reached this point of illegitimacy on the court. This Roe versus Wade has been upheld over the past 5 decades by Democratic courts, by Republican courts. The core points of Roe and then Casey after that have never really been seriously questioned. The fact that we've gone from a Supreme Court case that until today had almost nothing publicly to do with Roe to now being, hey, since we're here, let's take out abortion rights and save us another trip to Washington, I think really tells you exactly what Republicans prioritize, and it's not the law. What's
the message coming out of this? What's the, is this now you start building on the state level to start fighting for those laws? What's the marching order out of this?
Yeah, it's time to fight. I think Democrats, in a very sad way that I wish was not necessary, have been gifted an issue that will win them the 2022 election. Abortion is, believe it or not divisive. 80% of Americans support legal abortion and protecting Roe. This is an argument that will cut to the core of a shaky Republican coalition, but we have to sell that argument. And that has to become our main driving argument. People will want to talk infrastructure, but we've got to stick with what wins.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this comes out. When are we expecting a decision? Sometime over the summer?
Yeah, this is going to come right as the 2022 campaign season starts heating up. So rest assured, all of the activist groups I've spoken to have already begun preparing for every potentiality.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be dropped on the day they're heading out of town. Cause a little chaos, find your way out of town. But Max, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you. Hope folks will check out the most recent article over at Daily Beast. The Supreme Court makes clear the unthinkable is here on abortion, written by Max Burns. Max, thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Our good friend Max Burns. Again, make sure you check out his work. We're going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1955. That was the day that Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. With that action, she helped to launch the civil rights movement in the United States. Rosa Parks is often portrayed as simply a weary woman, tired from a long day of work as a seamstress. While that was true, she was also a member of the NAACP, who had been trained in race relations at the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee. Her refusal to give up her seat was a political act. When she was arrested, E.D. Nixon looked into what happened. Nixon was a leader of his union, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. He called the police department to inquire about Parks, only to be told it was none of your damn business. He found a lawyer and posted her bail. Leaders in the black community decided to declare a bus boycott for the following Monday. They called themselves the Montgomery Improvement Association. The first day of the boycott was a rounding success, but many wanted to end the action. At a meeting of the Montgomery Improvement Association, Nixon gave an impassioned speech where he said, "What's the matter with you people? We have been living off the sweat of these washermen all of these years, and you have never done anything for them. Now you can have a chance to pay them back. And you're too damn scared to stand on your feet and be counted." They decided to continue the boycott. In order to keep it going, organizers established a private taxi service to ensure that black residents could get to and from work. For more than a year, they kept up the boycott until they won their fight for desegregation. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
At least since the invention of the wheel, people have fixed, tinkered with, and improved every device they've possessed. It's been a human right. But after several thousand years, suddenly legal clauses are being tucked in purchase agreements saying that today's owners of products must not even peek, much less poke inside, the inner workings of our devices. Makers of anything with a computer chip in it, everything from your car to your toothbrush, have been especially vehement about this, rewriting human nature by outlawing our right to repair. Yes, they assert, you own the thing, but we own the intangible ideas that make it work. So if the product malfunctions, you must return it to us and pay us a premium to repair it. Plus, they prattle, you could hurt yourself trying to do it yourself, so trust us. Bovine excrement, barks Steve Wozniak. Companies inhibit your rights so they can have power, control over everything. Is he some consumer radical? No, Wozniak is the co-founder of Apple, the multi-billion-dollar global Goliath that is the world's biggest producer of consumer electronics. He's appalled that Apple has now become a fierce opponent of self-repair. He says we wouldn't have had an Apple except that early innovators like him grew up in a very open technology world. From the start, he points out, openness helps spread innovation and consumer demand. So, why stop the self-repair community, he asks? Two big reasons. Besides letting corporations lock in monopoly profits from the repair industry, it also dissuades customers from bothering with repairs. Just throw the thing away and buy a new one. This is Jim Hightower saying, if you wonder where such massive, deadly levels of pollution by lead, mercury, plastic, etc. come from, look to the gross throwaway ethic of big tech profiteers like Apple.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So evidently Mark Meadows has a new book, and evidently the new book says that Trump tested positive for coronavirus on September 26th, which is 3 days before the debate in Cleveland. And, you know, there are those who are going, hey, could he have gotten Joe Biden sick? I thought Joe Biden had a great line today when he was asked about it. He said, I don't think much about the former guy. I think that was a great line. But here's the thing. I mean, on the 26th, if he tested positive, there are tons of places that he would have been and he could have exposed others to. And one of the interesting things to me is you had one of his former White House officials, this Alyssa Farah, who told Jake Tapper that she was stunned to learn that Trump had tested positive for the virus the days before the debate. She was shocked. The revelation shocked her. She said, this demonstrates a flagrant lack of regard for public health and the well-being of others. She goes into saying, look, there were pregnant women, there were people over 65, there were a bunch of people there who were at risk, and he could have put them all at risk. And I'm sitting here listening to this going, and this surprises you somehow? This is who he is. And here to share some thoughts on, well, this, I've asked our good friend Dr. Keith Pochik to come talk with us. Dr. Keith, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me on again. I appreciate it. Great
so I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this Alyssa Farah's comments. That she's stunned, she's shocked. It's a reckless disregard for the safety of the pregnant women and the cancer survivors and the people over 65. He could have killed one of her colleagues. Now she seems upset about it. Am I missing something here?
No, I mean it's obviously not a surprise. I think that it's probably more damning to the White House staff, to Meadows himself, to the medical staff, who allowed him to continue to travel. He did a rally, I think, on the same day. That's where he was in. He was in the air to go to the Pennsylvania rally when he got the news about having the positive test. And so, basically at that point, everyone was it seems, was trying to appease him with what he wanted to hear. So, okay, yeah, we'll do another test. Sure. it's less sensitive, but it's going to give you the result that you want to hear, and then we won't talk about it again. And if you'll notice too, in that Guardian article, who kind of like dropped the initial scoop, the debate that happened in Cleveland on the 29th, which was after he had his positive and then subsequent negative crappy test, he arrived late, quote unquote, arrived late, and didn't get tested prior to the debate, and they took him at good faith that he did not have COVID. And it makes you obviously suspicious that
how convenient
that was all intentional and planned. That he showed up late, or didn't arrive on time on purpose, because he knew he was carrying COVID at that point.
Now, how convenient. Now, I went back and I looked at the news stories around that debate, and one of them on October 3rd. From Cleveland.com was that at least 11 people tested positive for COVID after the debate. They believe got it there, and all of that. And I got to tell you, I remember that debate well. I was under the impression that he had already had it. That was what was being floated at the time anyway, which is why they had done the kind of social distancing that they did. Because I remember there being stories that he did show up and do what he did. So it's kind of ringing a bell for me, but this just kind of confirms what we thought back then, like a lot of these books are doing right now.
Yeah, and it's one of those where you can dive and you almost have to dive a little bit into statistical concepts and test characteristics just a bit to really understand what it all means. But the fact that he had a positive test, the specificity of those tests, even in those generation of tests, was so high that it was absolutely reckless to assume that a subsequent test is negative, because the sensitivity, the likelihood of picking up a positive case, was far lower than the specificity. And so that's where, these are, I don't want to drive things too far off the rails and get too far into statistics, but that's really important, because there's a far higher likelihood that a positive test is positive with these types of tests than a negative test is truly negative. Right. And it's guaranteed that his medical team knew this. Did his chief of staff know it, and did he know it? I don't know. I mean, I think they probably can play dumb and make a valid excuse that they are actually dumb, and they wanted to appease him with the result that he wanted to hear. But his medical team and the scientists there that he was working with, that no other American had access to, could clearly have laid out those concepts, and that, hey, look, it's completely reckless to assume that positive test is a false positive. Right. That's where I think, I'm not going to say it's a crime, but that's where like the extraordinarily reckless decisions were made by assuming that positive test was a false positive.
Now, just a couple of days later, he was at Walter Reed Medical Center because he was sick. So, I mean, the timeline plays right in that, he tested positive and he was sick, and he was in there, and he got the Regeneron or whatever the right. All that was that you and I at the time didn't have access to. There's no question in my mind that this is accurate.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And the other thing too is that we have to remember that in the interim, between the positive test, subsequent negative rapid antigen test, which is nowhere near as accurate as a PCR, or even the other nucleic acid amplification tests that are commonly used. We won't get too far down into the science, but the rapid antigen test that was used to get him his negative that he wanted to achieve is not terribly sensitive. It's in maybe the 60-70% sensitivity rate for symptomatic patients. So they used that test, and then even prior to the debate, had Gold Star families come visit the White House maskless, and they're giving him hugs, and they're and that was one of the events that he actually used. He actually used some of those events to say that's probably where I picked it up. Where he was actually, at that point, he was actually patient zero.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had someone today goes, well, can you believe how he treated the Gold Star family? I'm going, hello, yes. Do you not remember Kaiser Khan?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I mean, so it's not, absolutely, it doesn't fall outside any sort of expected behavior for him, but it's pretty damning on the White House medical staff and the chief of staff, because I think that they understood those concepts, and instead they just wanted to appease him with the news that he wanted to hear, which you see obviously in authoritarian countries and regimes over and over and over, and you've seen that throughout history, and that's exactly what happened here.
No, and you go, why is this important? Why are we reliving this? Well, the reality is you got to get to the bottom of where the story goes here. You don't get to flip the narrative and say everything that's happened is Joe Biden's fault, when the reality is you got a guy who never took this seriously.
Absolutely right. You are absolutely right. And then, he marches up when he finally does make it out of the hospital after getting the $3 million, $6 million, whatever cocktail of meds that were, like you said, were unavailable to anyone else at that point. Gets discharged from the hospital, comes up the stairs, and just defiantly rips his mask off and just says to America, "This is nothing. Look at me. I just and that's part of the reason why we're still fighting these same battles that just doesn't seem like we can't completely get all the traction we need on masks and vaccines.
No, it's crazy. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Dr. Keith Pochik, talking a little bit about the former guy and, super spreader, Mr. President that he was. Also, I want to get into a little bit, Keith, with California is the winner. They are the first case of this Omicron variant that's come through, which I'm told is going to be spreading across the country. We better be prepared for it. And yet we've got Republicans who just in a couple of days are threatening a government shutdown. Just how horrible would it be for us to shut down our response to COVID and the Delta variant and now this Omicron that's coming through, if I'm saying that right? How deadly could this be?
Boy, that one's still up in the air, and I'm not sure if is it Omicron or Omicron. I always learned Omicron. I don't know. Like that's someone said that. Hey, that's the silver lining of COVID, is that we're all relearning the Greek alphabet, and so I don't know which way you exactly, if there is any silver lining, I don't know which way exactly say that. But from the way that I understand it is it a bit more vaccine evading? It seems like the data suggests that. Is it more serious, deadly, more likely to cause hospitalizations and deaths? It doesn't seem so far in the countries where they've seen a lot of activity there. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's like the good news, bad news, or maybe I'm trying to be too optimistic about it. And then, the question obviously becomes, what's our, at what point do we reach herd immunity? I mean, we've had obviously so many millions of Americans who've been affected with COVID, infected with COVID, and so many who've been vaccinated. Do we get to that point, or does this thing just continue to evolve and become seasonal, where we do need to have boosters and becomes more along the lines of influenza? And we're living through history here, and and that's why it's so important, I think, right now to just sort of trust the scientists and the people who know and the people who've studied this and have dedicated their lives to this, instead of talking heads, in the media. I mean, you can't. There's no substitute for that level of knowledge and experience, and we've put, we've put folks on equal footing who have, there's no basis to put them on equal footing.
Right. Are you saying we shouldn't be listening to, I don't know, a televangelist like this Marcus Lamb? Maybe we shouldn't be listening to Marcus.
Maybe not. And to me, Rick, and occasionally you see some, I don't want to say it's celebratory, but it's just like, hey, we told you so. When you see these stories over and over of these anti-vaxxers who are public about it and they wind up getting sick or they die, there's no celebration in my mind when that occurs anymore, because not only is it, hey, this is somebody we just, for whatever reason, we couldn't reach. And then also, I just feel for the healthcare workers who needlessly had to toil trying to keep this person alive, and just how many hours they spent when they're already understaffed, and how many gallons of sweat they poured out wearing their gowns and to fight for this person's life, who probably in all likelihood, if he had followed recommendations and gotten vaccinated, would have never been in the hospital in the first place. And that's where the real tragedy is. Obviously, I'm sitting in the seat of someone who's worked in healthcare for a couple decades.
Yeah, I know. I look at this and look, I don't celebrate someone's passing, but I'm not mourning this guy. I mean, at the end of the day, he made a choice. We are in a moment right now where we know that the people who are being hospitalized at overwhelming rates and the people who are dying are the unvaccinated. You've made that choice. I've gotten to the point where I don't think the mandate is going to help or happen. I've come to the point, and I've been here for a very long time. Capitalism is going to decide this. If you don't get vaccinated, your insurance rates are going to skyrocket. You're going to have negative outcomes. Your employers are going to have problems. I see this as capitalism decide because, our government has been ineffective to this point.
I agree with you, and I think it's if you look at our vaccination rates, sure that they lag behind for a quote unquote developed country, but still pretty good. What are we in the 70% range or so? And that's respectable. But I think what heartens me a bit, you look at a place like New York City, and they've introduced so much friction into the system for unvaccinated people that it's just made it really hard, I think, to live your life there as someone who's unvaccinated. Don't get in this cab if you're not vaccinated. Don't get on the subway if you're not vaccinated. Don't come in this restaurant if you're not vaccinated. A bunch of employers have the vaccine mandate, and I think that's what changes sort of the recalcitrant folks right there. We're going to make it incredibly inconvenient for you. So eventually you're going to say, you know what, I'm tired of spending all this time and money to get around this for something that, I've dug my heel in over, and I'm just going to go ahead and follow suit.
Yeah, and this is where I've been saying, capitalism will decide, and it'll figure it out, and we're eventually going to get there. But Dr. Keith, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing your knowledge. Always great talking with you, buddy.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate you having me.
Good stuff. Our good friend, Dr. Keith Pochik. Going to take a quick break right here. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425. Back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1912. That was the day the Anaconda Copper Company instituted its rustling card system at its mines in Butte, Montana. The company used the rustling cards in two ways. First, as a work permit, and then as a way to keep track of miners. A miner looking for work would first have to apply for a card. Miners had to present information about citizenship status, English literacy skills, work history, and 2 years of employer references. Once the card was approved, the miners would then be allowed to apply for work. The Butte Miners Union charged that it was the company's way of blacklisting those who had quit, been fired, or known as union militants. By 1917, the Metal Mine Workers Union and the IWW added that the company was looking to nip agitation in the bud. They alleged employers were holding onto cards or denying them altogether for no reason. According to historian Paul Brissenden, both unions maintained the company was looking to, quote, punish those who were at one time active in the socialist administration of Butte Mayor Lewis J. Duncan, to prevent the Socialist Party from again securing a foothold in Butte, to strengthen the hands of the more conservative unions, and to curb the industrial unionism of the IWW and Metal Mine Workers Union. The company asserted its right to keep out its enemies out of the mines, alleging they presented a danger to mine safety. But the unions shot back, stating the blacklist meant the hiring of untrained, inexperienced workers who presented the real danger. Brissenden notes that many union radicals continued to work in the mines despite the card system. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
The Strategic Petroleum Reserve will be replenished.
That story and a boatload of other news from while we were out.
That boatload from the GNR Strategic Reserve and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It's also not the best look right after you come back from a climate conference. We must end our addiction to fossil fuels. What's that? Gas is $3.50 a gallon? Let the rivers be choked with crude oil and the carcasses of pelicans.
This is your Green News Report. Burn! Hey, Desi Doyen, the Green News Report, we're back.
I know.
And as is the tradition, when we're gone for a week, we come back with a boatload of stories that you catch us up in somehow or another in just 6 minutes. Good luck.
Okay. Well, first, the bad news. More fossil fuel deaths, this time in Russia. Top managers at a coal mine in Siberia have been arrested after a buildup of methane gas in a ventilation shaft ignited last week, killing at least 52 people. It's the worst mining disaster in Russia in over a decade, according to officials.
That we know of.
In central Iran, violent crackdowns on farmers protesting water shortages. The protests have been taking place over the past month in the beds of dried up rivers. The farmers allege mismanagement and misallocation of scarce water resources. The Iran Meteorological Organization says that 97% of Iran now faces water scarcity issues amid an unprecedented drought exacerbated by man-made climate change. In Brazil, the Amazon rainforest saw record deforestation, the most since 2006, according to a new report. Critics accused President Jair Bolsonaro's administration of delaying the release of that report until after the recently concluded UN Climate Summit in Glasgow.
Of course he did.
Here in the U.S., the storm-weary Pacific Northwest is getting hit this week with yet another freight train of consecutive atmospheric rivers, bringing relentless heavy rain, severe floods, and major infrastructure damage. The National Weather Service on Monday confirmed that Seattle just broke its record for the wettest fall in recorded history.
Wow, and in Seattle, that is saying something.
In California, a preliminary report finds that climate-fueled wildfires have destroyed about 20% of all giant sequoias in just the past 2 years.
Horrible.
In the nation's capital, after OPEC producers resisted calls to increase production, President Biden ordered the release of 50 million gallons of oil from the nation's Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help ease spiking gas prices that are fueling inflation.
Did it work?
No. Analysts say the very gradual release from the reserve will have, at best, minimal effect on retail gas prices. State Department Energy Advisor Amos Hochstein told CNBC on Monday that the administration will release more from the reserve if needed.
This is a tool that was available to us and will be available again. And remember, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve will be replenished. And therefore, we have more flexibility to be able to do this again if the need arises.
Oh, I'm sure it won't.
In a new report, the Biden Interior Department recommended overhauling the nation's oil and gas leasing program on the public's lands, saying, quote, it fails to provide a fair return to taxpayers even before factoring in the resulted climate-related costs that must be borne by taxpayers.
So the oil companies and coal companies will be paying the U.S. more to take our natural resources?
Yes, the report recommends hiking royalty rates that have not been raised in more than 100 years.
Oh, man.
Taxpayers for Common Sense estimated that has cost taxpayers an estimated $13 billion in lost revenue just since 2010.
But let's not pick winners and losers, right?
The report calls for increasing bond payments. That's money that drillers must set aside to cover costs of cleanup and land restoration. It also recommends limiting the lands and waters available for drilling. Critics note the report did not address the leasing program's contribution to climate change and that it stopped short of recommending an end to the oil and gas leasing program on public lands.
Well, Biden has tried to stop oil and gas leasing on public lands for new leases, but he has approved more drilling permits than even George W. Bush.
Yep. But some good news.
Good.
The Interior Department also approved the second large offshore wind farm for the U.S. off the coast of Rhode Island. In Germany, the new incoming government committed to phase out coal entirely by 2030, 8 years earlier than previously planned.
Nice.
Plus a target of 80% renewable electricity by 2030 and mandatory rooftop solar on all new commercial buildings.
Nice and nicer.
Portugal announced that it is now entirely coal-free 9 years earlier than its deadline.
Wow.
Nearly 70% of Portugal's electricity is now generated from renewable energy sources.
Sweet.
And finally, Scotland announced that renewable energy met 97% of its electricity demand in 2020.
Well done, Desi Doyen. For much more on all of those stories, and yes, even more that we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
866-416-RICK. That's 866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment, something on your mind. National Labor Relations Board General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo. She tweeted out a couple of things that caught my attention. Things that I think are really, really going to be helpful. She tweeted out the National Labor Relations Act says nothing. Says that nothing in it should be construed to interfere with or impede or diminish in any way the right to strike. But for many years, she writes, the NLRB's case law has allowed the permanent replacement doctrine to do just that. And she included the language from the law stating, quote, nothing in this act except as specifically provided for herein shall be construed so as either to interfere with or impede or diminish in any way the right to strike or to affect the limitations or qualifications on that right. She is now saying, in the recent memo that the General Counsel put out, she said she's going to examine whether a change is necessary in the permanent replacement doctrine to fulfill the mission of the Act. This is the important part. Thus, if a charge is filed involving this issue, she'll consider whether it's appropriate to ask the NLRB to reconsider the law. Now, you look at what's going on right now. You have nurses who have been on strike for months. On strike for months in Worcester, Massachusetts at St. Vincent's Hospital. Who the only thing holding them back from going back to work is the hospital saying, we'll put your people back to work. We're going to let the scabs go, and we're going to put everybody back to work. We're not going to permanently replace people. Right now, you've got Kellogg's. Kellogg's, who the negotiations broke down. They said, "Well, we're gonna permanently replace your members." Now, look, the BCTGM members have been on strike for about 8 weeks now. This kind of messaging coming out of the General Counsel, I think, is really important. The fact that she's saying, "Look, bring this to us, and we will look at it again. Bring this to us, and we will do something about it." So to me, this is telling those nurses, "Hey, bring this to me. We're going to actually do something about it." I think this is a good thing. Let's go to the phone lines. We've got Leo on line one. Leo, how you doing tonight? Leo, you there?
Oh, hi. Yeah, this is Leo. Yeah, how you doing? I'm sorry. I thought you were asking for Bill.
No, Leo, that's you, man. Go.
Yeah. I have a little something which will make no sense to you. I'm a little bit drunk, so I apologize for everyone. But this COVID thing, I'm sorry to say, is going to be a never-ending disaster. And I'll tell you why I think it is.
Please do.
in Vermont today, they said that 78% of the people in Vermont are vaccinated, and the hospitals are being filled up with people that have COVID. And I'm wondering if we as a country are going to put up with having us and our children get vaccinated every effing 6 months. It is ridiculous. It is unpatriotic. And
I'm not getting the unpatriotic part, but
it.
okay. Here's the thing, and I'm looking at the Vermont story of the folks who are filling up their hospitals, and like here in Pennsylvania where I'm at, the people who overwhelmingly who are in the hospital sick are the unvaccinated. So it's the unvaccinated who are causing this to go longer than it has to.
And I disagree.
Okay, well, the facts and the numbers don't lie. It is what it is, Leo.
Is to get COVID and get over this garbage. Get the virus. Get through it.
Okay.
It's a cold, and everybody's going to be okay with it. Some of us will die. But you know what? Old people are supposed to die. I'm sorry. 85-year-old people, 95-year-old people are going to die.
All right, so you get it, you die, we'll be okay with that. Leo, I appreciate the call, man. We're not delving down that hole. And look, there are some people who believe this. There's some politicians who believe it. And I say, look, and this is where I've been. You don't want to get vaccinated at this point? Don't. What I know, here's what I know. The people who are struggling are the people who aren't vaccinated. So that's a way to thin the herd. And maybe Leo's right. Those are the folks who are going to go. But Leo, appreciate the call, man, and good for you tying one on a Wednesday night. Good stuff. But and I go back to this. Capitalism is going to decide. I have a relative who the reality is got a bill from the insurance company, an additional $1,500 for his insurance, because he's not vaccinated. They're going, okay, we know if you get it, you're probably going to go to the hospital. You're going to cost us a boatload of money. We know the unvaccinated are costing us, the insurance company, a boatload of cash. It is, we're going to have to pass it on. So if you don't have the vaccine, you don't have it, we're going to charge you a little bit more. That's where we're going. Because clearly, telling people it's in your best interest, clearly telling people that this is how we move forward, that ain't working. That's not helping, because you're always going to have people going, oh, it's just all stupid. Like somehow they've become epidemiologists and virologists now. And yet here again, I just talked to a doctor who spent his entire career learning about this stuff and lived through the whole pandemic watching people die. But that's where we are. But Leo, I appreciate the call. Let's go to line 3. We got Alice on 3. Alice, how we doing?
Pretty good, Rick. How are you?
I can't complain. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say, in regards to your previous caller, that I live in a wee little hamlet down in southwestern Pennsylvania, and the prevailing opinion seems to be the same as his, that no one should get vaccinated. And everyone now, all over town, is coming down with COVID. The vaccination rate here is a big 33%.
Wow.
And people are dropping dead right and left, and they're not old people either. They're young people. So, quite frankly, I'm willing to get another jab. I've had 3, so I think the patriotic thing to do is, of course, to get your jab.
Well, I'm not even going to go with patriotic. The decent thing to do is, if you're not going to, don't make other people sick. Stay away from them. This is the weird thing that some people think they have the right to make others sick, which is bizarre to me.
It is very bizarre, and it's certainly not Christian, which they seem to spout every time they turn around, that, it's the mark of the devil or something equally amusing, which I'm not quite sure where they got that from, but, I don't understand it either.
You know what's also interesting is, in talking with healthcare professionals who have lived through this, the people who are unvaccinated, when they get it and before they get intubated, they're asking for the vaccine, which is really just kind of, well, I guess, you eventually come around.
If they survive, but that's a little bit like shutting the barn door, as they say, after the horses have gotten out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just wanted to call in and say hi. Talk to you all the time there on Twitter.
Yep.
Carol will fill you in what my AKA is.
I got you.
So you have a good one now.
Thank you so much. No, look, at the end of the day here, I mean, the reality is I've come to the place where, we're not going to mandate people to get vaccinated. You're going to have to want to do it. You're going to have to want to protect yourself. And this, it's incredible to me, but I know so many people are going, oh, you're not going to make me do it. Well, what we see in these hospitals is, people are struggling. People are going to not make it. And maybe it's going to be you. And like this televangelist who just passed, 64 years old. I'm sure he thought, hey, I'll get it and I'll make it through. It won't be a big deal. Sure, he thought the same thing. Marcus Lamb was his name. And he was one of the ones out there saying, no, don't do it. No, it's the mark of the beast. And my favorite one are these people who get the vaccine because you got to continue to go work and then try to figure out how to de-vax themselves. That's the weird part. And I go through, they take baths in hot water. They do bloodletting. They, the bleach stuff. I mean, I'm still amazed at the level of some stupidity. I thought some of those kid challenges, like the cinnamon challenge or the boiling hot water challenge was bad. Okay, I'm going to get the vaccine and then just start slicing, cuts in my arm to hopefully it comes out. Yeah, listen to the experts. I think Dr. Keith Pochik was right. Listen to the scientists, the people who've spent their lives doing this. That's my thought. And if we want to get through this is how we do it. But as I said at the beginning, and the reality is, I have no tears for people who didn't get vaccinated and they find their way out the door. Good luck, better luck on the other side. I hope there's someone there to meet you. But at this point, if we want to get past this, if we want to make sure that there is a future for our kids, maybe help protect ourselves. Now, like you said, there's only going to be a couple % who are going to die. Do you want that to be you? And when we do, again, eventually overflow our healthcare system, which has happened and probably is going to happen again. The person having a heart attack, the person having cancer, the person having all of the other ailments. Are they going to have more negative outcomes? See, for me, it's always been about the healthcare system. Once you load the place up with people having COVID, you can't deal with the other stuff. I just wish we find a little bit of common sense on this. But thanks for the calls, guys. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst, to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. Back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1966. That was the day that the registered nurses of the Youngstown General Duty Nurses Association walked out of their jobs. Nursing could be a grueling profession, with long hours of physical labor for low pay. In Youngstown, the nurses were frustrated because there were inconsistencies in pay. Some recently hired nurses made more than those who had been working for years. Part-time nurses did not receive the same wage increases as full-time employees. They also did not feel that they had enough say in delivering quality care for their patients. When they asked to meet with the hospital's executive director to discuss their concerns, the nurses were rebuffed. They then contacted the Ohio Nurses Association union and asked for help. Youngstown was a steel town, a union town, and the nurses were ready to join in the local labor movement. At first, the Youngstown Hospital Association refused to bargain with the union. But when the nurses threatened to walk out, negotiations began. After 2 months of talking at the bargaining table, major issues remained unsettled, including pay and union recognition. Fed up, the nurses called for a mass resignation. 305 of the 433 nurses turned in their resignations. 2/3 of them were part-time nurses. They formed informational picket lines outside the hospitals. A federal mediator was brought in to settle the dispute. In the end, the nurses won significant gains. They received a more than 25% raise over 2 years. A grievance procedure was established for the first time, but most importantly, the union gained recognition and the right to bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions for the nurses and their patients. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So get ready for it. Tomorrow morning, I'm expecting the billionaire owners of baseball teams across the country to lock out their workers. Now, understand, it is not a strike. The players are not going on strike. There's not an impasse. It's not a work stoppage. It's a lockout. These are the billionaire owners of these baseball teams saying, no, we're not going to negotiate. We're done. You're to the curb. They're going to exert their power. This is Major League Baseball. It's on them solely. It is not on the players at all. Remember that tomorrow when you see the reports where they talk about, oh, there's a work stoppage, or oh, there's an impasse. No, it's a lockout. The players union, they want to sit and negotiate. The owners, no, they want to impose. And as we found out, the share of revenue going to the players has been going down, and the owners want even more. And this, at some point, you got to stand up to it. So remember that come tomorrow. It is what it is. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So, baseball lockout coming. Big fun there, huh?
Well, I can tell you the last time we had people calling our office when I was in Congress saying, don't get involved, and other people saying, get involved. Went to the White House. I can remember I was standing with next to Mary Bono. She wasn't congressperson at the time. Sonny was still alive. And we were waiting for President Clinton to come downstairs. Hillary came down. And we were waiting and waiting and waiting, and somebody said he's upstairs sitting with, I don't know if Bowie Kuhn was the commissioner, I forget. He's upstairs negotiating the strike to end. And he came down, I think he did it, and I was like, okay, maybe Congress doesn't have a role, but maybe the president did. So I do remember when Clinton did something.
Yeah, it was 94 that happened.
Okay.
I have a listener who said, no, it wasn't Bill Clinton. It was Michael Jordan, because that was, I guess, the year Michael Jordan went back to basketball. Am I getting that right?
No, it was after 94 because I was elected in 94, started serving in 95. So it was 95 when Clinton got involved with the baseball strike or pending strike or something, one of them.
Yeah. I remember the 94 strike. Maybe there was another one. There was
another one or a pending one. It was baseball for sure, but we were downstairs waiting, and Hillary came down saying there's a good reason that he's late, and it involved. Rick, it could have been football. Honestly, I don't know. It was one of those.
It was
one of those.
It was. But the important part tomorrow.
Have a hearing on this, and they'll have an investigation.
Yep.
And they'll probably mess up collective bargaining for the players.
Oh, don't even start.
But this is about a collective bargaining agreement, of course, and it is clearly a lockout. And then of course the owner said they're forced into a work stoppage by the players because there's no renegotiated issue of having a collective bargaining agreement, and so they're going to do that in the form of a lockout. So they're going to have the woe is me, we're forced into this one deal.
Yeah, we did it, but we were forced into it. Yeah. No, you could have sat down and negotiated, and they're not. You stay at the table and you get things done. And to me, this is where I think we have to look at our labor law in this country and find a mechanism to where you don't get to have these kind of scenarios.
Well, right, because the law, a strike would be on the players' side, and the lockout is the management side. And these are team owners, and they initiate this stoppage, the team owners. So it's not a refusal to work on behalf as a result of the players, but it's a lockout, and that is a refusal to permit work to be done.
Yep.
That's what a lockout, as you know. I'm just clarifying what I understand of it. You know better than I do, but that's what it is. They're not permitting work to be done by the lockout, and that means that I think their free agency whole process is frozen on the market, and et cetera, et cetera. The players can't use any of the team facilities, I don't think, during the lockout.
Nope, none of that stuff. And we'll see where this goes. Now the season's not for a while yet.
Right.
They've got time. Maybe they'll come to some resolution. But I just want to make sure that when you wake up, you realize it's a lockout. These are the billionaire owners making this decision. Also wanted to get your thoughts on the revelations that Trump tested positive before the debate with Joe Biden in Cleveland in your state there, and they knew about it.
This is coming from the former chief of staff, and I guess if it was coming from, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a name who would write a book that you would say, okay. Well, no, his previous attorney, Cohen.
Right.
Who I had no use for Cohen as much as anybody else, but
or your buddy with the mustache.
Which one's that?
John Bolton.
Oh, buddy threw me off. John Bolton. Right. Yeah. Well, no, if it came from Bolton, I don't like him. I might halfway believe it. You never know. Of course, Bolton would say that because he tested positive, he couldn't start another war. But this was the last chief of staff of the president, Mark Meadows, and because it was the chief of staff and Meadows knows the political system, I've got to say that there's most likely some truth to this thing.
No, I think there is, because if you look at the timeline, he was there on the 26th. The debate was on the 29th.
Right.
You got the stories in the Cleveland News of 11 people testing positive out of that. So someone did introduce it there, and then that Friday he's at Walter Reed, getting Regeneron and all that other stuff, and then all of the craziness of driving around in the limo and all of that comes out of it. The timeline seems to fit.
Right, because Trump announced he had COVID on October the 2nd, and the White House said, and let me make this point. The White House said he announced the result within an hour of receiving it. Now, that could be true, but he tested positive before. Then he got another test and said, within an hour of receiving this test, hey, I have COVID, when he already had COVID before.
Right.
He still tested positive for it.
Yeah. Again, it's not surprising to me. And you had one of his top officials, this Alyssa, what was her name again? Alyssa Farah. Who's saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm surprised, I'm shocked." He put people at risk who were possibly pregnant and all this other stuff. And I'm going, yeah. How are you surprised by this?
And again, on this case, if it was Bolton, and he had an axe to grind because he was fired, et cetera, they always say that. They don't like me. They have an axe to grind. But in this case, it's the last chief of staff, which there didn't seem to be any great vendetta there by Meadows.
Yeah. This will sell some books because some people are going to want to read it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Wanted to get your thoughts on this whole Lauren Boebert, Ilhan Omar story. Evidently, Nancy Pelosi says Democrats can't allow that indecent comment to stand. They're going to do something about it. What can they do? What should they do you think?
Well, I think on this one, I think both sides are playing with fire, and I'll tell you why. As much as Gosar, going back to the NMA, as much as it was childish, distasteful, wrong in every possible manner, I'm not sure that the House wants to start precedents of saying, you did that and we're throwing you off the committees, number one. Number two, on a political note, and I know you've said this and I agree with you, let the Republicans deal with the Republicans, and let the Democrats deal with the Democrats, unless there's some type of, absolute criminal offense.
Yep.
Then the Ethics Committee deals with it. I think Gosar should go to the Ethics Committee. I think Boebert should. They can file an ethics charge and see what happens out of it. But I think that the House just unilaterally making this is going to start to play with fire, because I think the Republicans will come back. They'll watch for one mistake somebody on the Democrat side makes, and then they're going to demand them to be thrown off the committee. Then all of this becomes the food fight in the stories when there's a thousand other fish to fry. So I'm not saying that the people go unnoticed or unpunished, but it's the method of how you deal with it.
Yeah, no,
and that's why they have an ethics committee. And I think the Speaker really needs to be careful, because, yes, Boebert, did something wrong, and Boebert's going to say, well, I called to apologize, but she should apologize. Now they're raising the issue of what she said about Jewish people, and nothing really, quote, was done to her for that. Why wasn't something done to her for that? That's what they're going to say. And then this becomes a major distraction when there's an ethics committee process, I think, to deal with these things.
No, I'm right there with you. But, here's the thing. I mean, nothing that Boebert said is a surprise. And the fact that I believe all of this is made up in her head is equally not surprising.
Correct.
I mean, it's all about, and this is my problem with our political structure right now, where you've got someone like her in Congress. You've got someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress, who is really a complete idiot, who just says the most incendiary things to get attention, and we give it to them.
Right. Well, and I think this, again, making this decision as the Speaker versus letting the Ethics Committee do it is going to, I think, in the long run, cause some problems. Yeah. And there's processes. Of course, in the good old days, one member went after another, and then other members retaliated back at him, and they went back and forth, and that it didn't go to the leadership realms. But also, I think that the Democrats, in doing this, take a lot of the Republicans' problems off of their hands.
Yeah, it's right where I'm at. I mean, let them own her. They absolutely
Correct.
need it. Last bit I wanted to get from you. Supreme Court today heard the Mississippi case. Any thoughts on where the court might lead on Roe?
Well, I mean, it's not looking good. People are, assuming that today it's going to be the worst. They have, I think, around till June to actually make the case, which will be right in the middle of everything. On a political basis, this may bring some of the women back to the Democrat side that the Democrats have lost. It depends what the justices do. Of course, the Roe versus Wade prevented states from prohibiting abortion before the point of fetal viability. Typically, that was estimated between 22 and 24 weeks. So this one would go to 15 weeks with Mississippi. Now, I will say this, and that's why I can't really judge the impact yet. It'll be 15 weeks if this holds, and 90% of the abortions, as what I read today, are at 13 weeks. So, yes, it would prevent, but 90% are at 13 weeks, so 90% statistically won't be affected. Now, will the 90% of the women that, do get abortions, will they stand up and be disturbed for people who go beyond the 13 weeks, or 15 weeks in this case?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it definitely could have a huge impact of reigniting people on this issue.
No, I'm expecting an interesting summer next summer. I expect the decision to come out on the last day as the justices are heading out of town, and the mess being left behind for us to fight over. But it's going to be an interesting time.
Ironically, the Republicans will try to steer it to three other issues. Economy and immigration.
Yeah.
They're going to try to steer it.
As they're doing right now as we speak. But Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
No, he's right. I mean, this is they're not going to spike the football too loudly, I don't think. they're going to continue to focus on going after, trashing our economy and making things worse in that vein. Because look, whether you voted for Joe Biden or not, the guy's done the job. The guy has showed up. He's done the job. He's gotten a massive infrastructure bill pushed through. He got a massive rescue plan pushed through that helped families make it through the pandemic. There's a lot of good stuff here. And this Build Back Better plan is something that the family values Republicans should absolutely be behind, because it does help families. Helps with childcare, helps with early childhood education, helps put a little food on the table so kids don't go hungry. Helps families get access to some family leave if in the event that they need it. There's a lot of stuff in here really popular with working class folks, which is why, sadly, we're probably not going to see it happen, because the Republicans will do everything they can to block it, even if it means shutting down the government here in a couple of days. December 3rd, get ready for it. I'm sure that they're preparing and trying to, or maybe they'll push it off till December 24th. So it can be our Christmas present. We can wake up Christmas morning to a government shutdown, because that's what they do. It's just, well, we got a lot of organizing to do around this and a lot of things to pick up on. Finally, wanted to get to the fact that remember the whole Republican argument, the whole Mike Lindell, the whole Sidney Powell, all of the 2020 was stolen, and people are voting multiple times. Well, it turns out, someone did vote multiple times. Evidently, 72-year-old Joan Halstead, who has been arrested and booked in Sumter County, Florida, in jail there, because evidently she, according to what she's being charged with, voted a number of times. She's been released on bond, $2,000, but evidently in Florida, casting more than one ballot is a third-degree felony, punishable up to 5 years in prison. She, a Trump supporter, according to her Facebook page, according to the reports. I'm interested to see how this goes out. Now, again, where I'm at in Pennsylvania, there were a couple of Republican voters who did vote for others. They voted a couple of times. Well, someone passed away. Well, the kid didn't vote the right way. We're going to go after that. So, evidently people do vote more than once. And they seem to be Republicans. How weird. How weird. The people who are pointing their finger going, "You're doing this," are the ones actually doing it. And it reminds me of something my mother always said. When you point your finger at someone, you got three pointing back at you. This is it. This is the GOP. And look, I don't want it to be that way. I want everybody to have access to be able to vote once. Be able to get to cast your ballot, have a say in this wonderful experience of self-governance. Instead of having gerrymandered districts like we're seeing states all across this country, barriers between people and their ability to access the ballot box. We need real reform of our voting systems. And that's something Democrats have to do. And they need to do it soon. So there's a lot of work to do here. There's a lot of things that need to be done. There are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of things that could help us move forward. They just have to be the ones who are going to step forward and get it done. It is that simple. If you've missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Remember, podcast. Download the podcast. Share. Let your friends know. All of that stuff. Important to do. Again, I want to welcome our new affiliates in Chicago, WCPT, 820 AM, and, of course, in Minneapolis, AM 950, KNTF. Thanks for coming along. Back here every weeknight, 9 to 11 Eastern, 8 to 10 Central. And again, if you missed any of it, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get. The rest of the week, we've got a lot in store. I want to get to some stuff on the statements of the General Counsel from the NLRB. We're going to get some folks to talk about why it's important to do something about the permanent strike replacement doctrine. We're going to get some folks to talk about the abortion hearing here today and where that could lead, and the organizing that we're going to need to do around it. This is a big issue. And it's a big issue for men as well. But again, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.